The hospital corridor gleamed with marble floors and quiet wealth, yet the air was heavy with despair. At the far end, behind thick glass walls, lay the most fragile life in the building, a newborn child fighting for breath. Machines hummed softly, their cold rhythm echoing like a countdown no one dared to hear aloud. The billionaire stood alone. For decades, his name had opened doors, bent rules, and silenced doubts. Entire cities bore his investments. Politicians returned his calls within seconds. But now, dressed in an expensive suit that suddenly felt meaningless, he stared at his child and felt smaller than he ever had before. 18 doctors had already come and gone. Each had spoken in careful, professional tones. "We tried everything. The condition is extremely rare. There are no remaining options." One by one, they removed their gloves, avoided his eyes, and left him with silence. The best medicine money could buy had failed. Inside the incubator, the baby's chest rose unevenly. Tiny fingers curled weakly, as if searching for something, or someone, to hold onto. The billionaire pressed his palm against the glass, his breath fogging the surface. "I can buy anything," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Anything, except time." Outside, the rain battered the hospital windows, streaking them with silver lines. Each drop felt like a reminder of all the deals he had won, all the risks he had taken, and all the moments he had postponed, thinking there would always be tomorrow. He had built an empire, yet he had missed the simple miracle of being present. A nurse passed quietly behind him, her expression gentle but tired. She paused, then spoke softly. "We'll keep watching through the night," she said. "Sometimes, miracles don't follow schedules." He nodded, though hope felt dangerous now. Sitting down in a leather chair meant for important visitors, he buried his face in his hands. For the first time in his life, he prayed, not to win, not to gain, but simply to save. In that moment, surrounded by silence and rain, the billionaire understood a painful truth. Power ends where humanity begins. And somewhere else in that same hospital, unseen and unnoticed, fate was already preparing an answer. While fear and wealth occupied the private wing of the hospital, another world existed just a few corridors away, one without marble floors or quiet luxury. Here, the paint was chipped, the benches were hard, and the air smelled of disinfectant and long waiting hours. This was where people with nothing but patience and hope gathered. On one of those benches sat a boy. He couldn't have been more than 12. His skin was dark, his hair unevenly cut, and his jacket was too thin for the cold air drifting through the hallways. The soles of his shoes were worn down, flapping slightly when he walked. No one asked where he came from. No one wondered why he was there every day. In a place filled with suffering, he was just another quiet shadow. Yet the boy was never idle. He carried cups of water for elderly patients whose hands shook too much to hold them steady. He helped a tired mother rock her crying child. Sometimes, he held doors open for nurses rushing past, offering a shy smile that rarely received more than a passing glance. When thanked, he nodded politely and slipped away, as if kindness were something to be done quietly, without attention. Most evenings, he sat near the glass wall of the intensive care unit. He did not belong there, yet something kept pulling him back. Through the glass, he watched the tiny baby surrounded by machines. He didn't know the child's name, only the way the baby struggled, the way the monitors flickered uncertainly. The boy's eyes softened each time he looked inside, filled with a sadness far too deep. For someone his age, sometimes, when no one was watching, he whispered prayers. Not loud prayers, not practiced ones, just simple words shaped by hope. He prayed the way hungry people pray, the way forgotten people pray, honestly. He asked for strength for the baby, peace for the parents, and courage for the doctors. And then he added, quietly, "If I can help, please let me help." The doctors walked past him daily. The nurses hurried by. The billionaire never noticed him at all. But the boy noticed everything. He noticed the father's trembling hands behind the glass. He noticed the way hope was fading from the room. And deep inside, something stirred, an understanding that sometimes the smallest hearts are called to the greatest acts. The boy lowered his gaze, unaware that his presence in that corridor was no accident. Fate had already seen him. It was well past midnight when the hospital began to quiet down. The lights dimmed, footsteps softened, and even the machines seemed to breathe more slowly. Hope, however, was slipping away. Inside the intensive care unit, the baby's condition worsened, and the doctors exchanged looks that said what their words could not. The boy stood at the edge of the corridor, clutching the hem of his worn jacket. He had been watching the monitors for hours, listening to the hushed voices of nurses, sensing the urgency in the air. Something inside his chest felt heavy, almost painful, like a truth demanding to be spoken. He stepped forward. A young nurse nearly collided with him as she hurried past. "Excuse me," the boy said quietly, his voice trembling but steady enough to be heard. I think I can help the baby." She stopped, startled, and looked down at him. For a moment, she thought he was confused, another frightened child imagining a miracle. But there was something in his eyes, certainty mixed with fear, that made her pause. "What do you mean?" she asked gently. The boy swallowed. "My blood," he said. "It's different. Doctors told my mother once. They said it was rare." The nurse hesitated, then led him to the staff room. Soon, 2 doctors joined them, exhaustion etched into their faces. When the boy explained again, the room fell silent. One doctor sighed softly, another shook his head. "This isn't a game," one said. "The procedure could be dangerous. You're just a child." The boy nodded. He had expected that. "I know," he replied. "But the baby is smaller than me. And if no one helps, he won't live." They asked about his family. He told them his mother had died years ago, that he'd been in and out of shelters, that hospitals were the only places where he felt close to her memory. When tests were run, the results stunned everyone. His blood carried a rare compatibility, something no adult donor had. The doctors looked at one another, torn between ethics and desperation. "Do you understand what this means?" a senior physician asked softly. The boy took a deep breath. His hands shook, but his voice did not. "If I don't try," he said, "the baby dies. If I do try, maybe we both live." Silence filled the room. Then, slowly, a decision was made. As consent forms were prepared and machines readied, the boy lay back on the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. Fear washed over him, but beneath it was something stronger. Hope. For the first time, someone had listened. And for the first time, the boy understood that even the smallest life could make the biggest choice. The intensive care unit was silent in a way that felt sacred. Doctors moved carefully, their voices lowered, as if sound itself might disturb the fragile balance of life in the room. Bright lights illuminated the machines, the tiny body of the baby, and now, beside him, the small figure of the boy lying on a narrow hospital bed. A thin tube connected them. The billionaire stood behind the glass, unaware at first of what was happening. When he noticed the child, confusion crossed his face, followed by alarm. He turned to a doctor, his voice sharp with panic. "Who is that boy?" he demanded. "What are you doing?" The doctor answered quietly, almost reverently. "He's giving your child a chance." Inside the room, the boy stared at the ceiling, his heart pounding. The needle in his arm stung, but he didn't flinch. He thought of his mother, of the nights she'd held him when he was sick, whispering that kindness was never wasted. He closed his eyes and imagined her voice, steady and warm, telling him he was brave. Minutes passed, then more. The monitors beeped steadily, then hesitated. A nurse held her breath. A doctor leaned closer to the screen. The baby's oxygen levels flickered, once, twice, then slowly began to rise. The room seemed to inhale all at once. "Wait," someone whispered. The baby's tiny chest lifted more evenly. A faint sound escaped his lips, barely more than air, but unmistakably a cry. It was soft, fragile, alive. Tears streamed down the billionaire's face as his knees gave way. He pressed his hand to the glass, no longer seeing machines or wires, only a miracle unfolding before him. All his wealth, all his power, had failed. Yet a child with nothing had given everything. Inside the room, the doctors exchanged stunned looks. Years of training had not prepared them for this moment. One nurse wiped her eyes. Another whispered, "It's working." The boy opened his eyes slowly. Weakness washed over him, but when he heard the baby cry again, stronger this time, a small smile curved his lips. He had done it, not alone, not perfectly, but with courage. As the procedure ended, the connection was removed. The baby slept peacefully now, his color improving with every breath. The boy was wrapped in a blanket, his body tired but his heart full. That night, in a hospital built on science and success, the greatest breakthrough did not come from knowledge or money. It came from compassion, and everyone who witnessed it knew they would never forget this moment. Morning light crept gently through the hospital windows, washing the corridors in soft gold. The storm from the night before had passed, leaving behind a quiet calm, like the world itself was holding its breath in gratitude. In the intensive care unit, the machines still hummed, but their rhythm was steady now, no longer urgent. The baby slept peacefully. For the first time since his child was born, the billionaire allowed himself to sit down without fear crushing his chest. He watched the tiny rise and fall of the baby's chest, and tears returned, not from despair, but from awe. Standing nearby was the boy, wrapped in a borrowed sweater, his face pale but peaceful. The billionaire approached him slowly, unsure of what words could possibly be enough. "You saved my son," he said, his voice breaking. "I owe you everything." He spoke of money, of education, of homes and opportunities. He promised the best schools, a future without hunger or fear, a life protected from hardship. Each offer sounded generous, logical, everything he had relied on his whole life to solve problems. The boy listened quietly. When the billionaire finished, the boy shook his head gently. "I didn't do it for that," he said. "I helped because someone needed me." The words struck deeper than any accusation ever could. The billionaire realized then how poor he had been in ways no bank statement could show. He had believed wealth was measured in numbers, in power, in control. But the boy, who owned almost nothing, had given life itself. The billionaire knelt so they were eye to eye. "Then let me do one thing." "Right," he said softly. "Let me stand beside you, not above you." From that day forward, he kept his promise. The boy was given care, stability, and education, not as charity, but as family. The billionaire funded hospitals for children with rare conditions, shelters for those without voices, and programs that taught compassion alongside knowledge. But the greatest change was invisible. The billionaire became present. He listened. He learned. He held his son each night and taught him a lesson money could never buy. That greatness is not found in what you have, but in what you are willing to give. Years later, the boy would often say he never felt poor again. Because the day he chose kindness, he discovered the truth. A rich heart is the only wealth that truly saves lives.